what you find is if you have a startup business, you're not going to go down to the bank to your handy-dandy loan officer and hand him or her a business plan and get your money. You're too risky. You don't have any history for me to check. So you're going to have to find your money in a lot of different ways. I did tell John that I would tell you a little bit tonight about where you're going to get your money, from the least likely to the most likely. The largest amount of money that goes out, largest number of dollars, comes from venture capitalists. Most of you will never go to a venture capitalist. They don't invest in early stage companies. They want you to already have equity in the company yourself. And incidentally, I'll get these notes and you can have them if you want to take them. I'd rather talk to you than have you writing everything down unless you really need it. They will invest in companies that are high risk, at least to you, but they have a lot of hurdles that they make a company go through before they ever commit to giving the money. However, they are willing to invest lots of money. They only are looking at companies that have a potential for very high returns. Your small entities would not attract them. However, if the larger company that your professor is running has a lot of potential, then they're willing to invest. One of the issues that goes along, though, with having a venture capitalist invest in your company is that they expect to have some control over it. And in many cases, they expect to have a lot of control over it. So while you may get a lot of money from them, you're also going to give up a lot of your autonomy. So there's always an exchange when you're dealing with venture capitalists. They tend to specialize in certain industries, so just because you find the name of one and can get in to see him, which is unlikely, but if you could get in to see one, it may be that that venture capitalist specializes in another industry altogether. So I'm not going to spend much time for it, but they want your venture to have about 5 years of experience already. Or now if you're Steven Spielberg or Steve Jobs or one of those guys, I dare say that Bill Gates could get venture capital just on his name, you know. But for most of us, they want you to already have a track record, not be a startup. They want you to be generating revenues, and these are just some numbers that I pulled out about 3 years ago. I haven't taught in that area since Katrina, because I ended up being an administrator pulling things back together. But about 3 or 4 years ago, these are the numbers. They want you to generate about $10 million a year in revenue. I hope all of you have projects that are generating that kind of money. They want you to grow by at least 20% a year and have a pre-tax profit margin of at least 15%. And I'm sure we'll all fit into that one day. However, as I said, you're going to have to worry about how much control they get in exchange for the amount of money they give you. Some venture capitalists want to be involved in almost daily operations. You definitely don't want that. Or maybe you do. Sometimes you're really good, you have a good skill, you have a great technology that you're working on, but you really don't know much about management. So you want to work together with a venture capitalist. Other times you know what you're doing and you just don't want somebody else meddling. But if I'm giving you $1 million, I want to have some control over how you spend that $1 million. So my advice to you early on with your small business is don't go looking for venture capitalists. There are people called business angels. These are individuals who like to invest in startup businesses. They know that the failure rates for startup is very high. Over half of them fail. And there are a variety of reasons for that. Some of them aren't so bad. Sometimes people go into business and think that this is going to be fun and find out that it's working all day, every day, and being very responsible, and they choose to close these businesses. When we're doing research on how many businesses fail, we really look at how many businesses continue from year to year. So if a business disappears, it's looked at as a failure. It may have been a decision by the owner to not do that anymore, okay? I just don't want to be an entrepreneur. It may be that that business has been bought out by another company or has merged with another company. So it's really hard to get those kinds of figures. But the investors, the business angels, are willing to invest in some smaller firms. Typically what you get are groups of doctors or dentists or lawyers or people who have extra money around to invest. And even though new ventures are high risk, when one hits, I mean, the chances of making a lot of money is really good. So there you go. Now, that's just the introduction, because those are the areas you hear about these people on TV. And you can find lists of venture capitalist names. There are books that are printed with those people. But most of us don't really start businesses that way. We start it with something called bootstrap financing, and that really is, I think, descriptive. Our personal savings. Most of you have enough personal savings to start your business? Me either. Okay. I always let my students pretend. I would give them $20,000 to start. Okay, let's pretend you have $20,000 in savings. Now go on. And one of the first things they found is that $20,000 isn't a lot of money when you're trying to start up a business. By the time you do rent and utilities and whatever changes you have to make in the building and whatever you have to buy product-wise to get started, and then this marketing, my goodness, that's expensive. So they found that that $20,000 that I was such an angel to invest in their companies didn't go very far. And so they had to look for other places to find money. Please, maybe we should turn the camera off. Not really. I don't recommend that you do this, but many people do. They use credit cards. It gives them a way of handling cash flow problems. If you're making a product, you've got to pay up front for all your materials, and then you've got to make what you're making, then you've got to bill the customer, and then you've got to give the customer 30 days to pay. So there's a long time from the money that you put in until you collect. So there's a cash flow problem. You have money out, but you don't have money in yet. And one way that some people use is credit cards to carry them through. Now, I don't recommend it because the interest rate on credit cards is astronomical. It is a really poor way to finance business. But in reality, I mean, we all know what the books say, but in reality, a lot of people do use credit cards. And for many years, they used personal credit cards, but now there are small business credit cards that are available, so some of them have those. But I just want to make sure, even though it's on film, I'm not recommending that. Second mortgages have been a way, equity loans. A lot of people who own homes go in, and it's usually your largest asset, and so you're able to get more money because you've been paying on your home, particularly if you've owned it for a few years. So that is a way to pull out money to get started. One of the problems with that is your wife or husband, whoever, may not be very happy if in fact you start your business and you use the equity in the house to get it going, and it is not a successful business. Then we've got real problems at home. So think carefully before you do it, and make sure that you've got cooperation there. Sometimes you can get extended terms from suppliers. If you're making a product and you know you're not going to be able to sell this product until 3 months down the road, sometimes you can get extended terms from suppliers. Usually you aren't able to do that unless you have a prior relationship with them. If I've worked with Home Depot for many years and I've worked with suppliers to that company, and I decide to go out and start a business of my own, I may be able to take that relationship that I have had with Home Depot with me and have those suppliers work with me and give me extended terms. That's actually what happened to Bernie Marcus, who is one of the founders of Home Depot. He had been working with Handy Dan, a company we don't hear anything about anymore. It was a part of Dalen Company, I think. But he had been working with that company, and he had built relationships with the suppliers there. So after he was fired from Handy Dan and went on to start up Home Depot, he was able to get extended terms, but that's because he already had a relationship. Another thing you find is that when you're starting up a business, you really need some kind of experience. Experience in the industry, experience with the particular type of company that you're running. It may even be an avocation, something that's a hobby that you're turning into a business. But you really need some understanding of the industry itself before you go out there and get started. Most of you aren't going to leave here and become entrepreneurs on day one. You really will need a job because your parents will push you for that. You know, they kind of like it when you go out. I'm sure you'll help them with that, right? Every one of them. Okay. And I do think you're marketable out here. But you can do that. But finally, the last form of bootstrap capital, and the one you're most likely to use, is money from family and friends. It can be very good. It can be just excellent because Uncle Bill is really going to love you if you go out and start up a new Xerox or a new Home Depot or a new Microsoft. On the other hand, Uncle Bill is not going to like you at all if you go out and start up a clunker. And we know the failure rate, so your chances are about 50-50 no matter what you do. So think very carefully before you get money from family and friends. Which leads me, I love these things that segue nicely, which leads me into the discussion of business plans, which is why I'm really here tonight.